So, ladies and gentlemen, as you see, there's not a whole lot of production value in this particular intro because the intro is going to be short. As we promised, this session is actually going to be all about Dave. He has sent me a message to tack on after my brief intro from the Galactic Federation. He has sent me some preview images of some of his encounters that you'll see just after that, and then it'll be the next 90 minutes of Dave talking about the things that Dave has experienced and a few more images at the end. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dave Wallace, and keep yourself engaged for about the next hour and a half.
Mankind must remind itself on a continual basis that peace and release of control over one another is the key to the great landing which is imminent. The reason we have held back thus far is because there is so much confusion regarding source. Information and technology can be and will be your friend. It will be those understandings about the time in which you exist and your human ability to initiate technology in a more positive way that stands before you as either a porthole or a barrier. We would like you to find the clarity of the message rather than the promotion of yourselves. This has always been our intention, and we will guide you and continue to send messages of higher thinking and accessing your higher purpose as you find all of the contact fascinating. It is not the fascination aspect we require you to experience, but that you should be more joyous that the time has finally come for all of you to stand together united by love and the freedom of thought you may all achieve by ending the suffering perpetrated against one another in the challenges from your past. We are releasing your planet of the dark agents of control, which have been guiding your development for the last 2,000 years and giving you the wrong information about your species' shared destiny. When you release your need to control your immediate environment and the environment of both your planet and its other creatures, we will then continue with your development. We are different from you physically, yes. We are able, however, to always see the truth and found that the simple purpose in existence is to release the idea of control and accept that all species from your world deserve to live without hate, fear, and lies, all of which are human emotional expressions from your earliest beginnings. You need to be ready today, not tomorrow. We will be there when you look to the skies, but urge that you look to yourselves for the solution first. Be ready now. Do not predict a future event regarding our involvement. Trust in yourselves. As we trust you will be honest with us. We see a great many of you trying to guide the new experience we bring to you. This is not what is in your best interest. Do not seek to guide an experience such as this. Shepherd yourselves and we will guide you. Make peace with your own heart and we will show you the attention so long overdue. To all of you we send many greetings of love and patience. Listen to your collective voice and release control. Only then will your spiritual reality become the future you so deserve. We love you so much. Be unafraid as we walk this path with you. The Galactic Federation has spoken to David.
Hi, my name is David Wallace. I've spent my life as a professional in the food and wine industry. I have a lot of college accreditation towards things like thermodynamics, enology, fermentation, and worked in the wine trade in Northern California for 10 years as an assistant winemaker. I also was a brandy distiller. 4 years of that time in Northern California, I worked for the Mendocino County Sheriff's Department as a 911 dispatcher, and I had my police training at the Contra Costa Criminal Justice Training Center in Orinda, California. So I have a background of science and I have a background of professional communication skills, but also more importantly, professional observation skills. When you go to Law Enforcement Academy, you are trained in how to observe everything around you all of the time. Those skills served me in the most unusual experience that could ever happen to anybody in life. In 2017, on January 7th, I was taken away from my home. A very large ship came down, and I took some photographs of it and went upstairs. After my experience, it led me to go back to university and study astrophysics. Two of the books that were most helpful for me while I was studying astrophysics are Mathematics of Classical and Quantum Physics by Frederick W. Byron Jr. and Robert W. Fuller. This is a book that was published at first in 1967, but is full of wonderful, easy to understand equations and formulas for people that are past their power series and are interested in a career in astrophysics or in telemetry or in quantum mechanics. It is the user's guide to hardcore physics as well, and explains everything of every aspect of the 11 different branches of modern physics. The second most important book that was helpful for me, especially after my off-world experience, was Gravitation by Charles W. Meisner and Kip S. Thorne and Mr. Wheeler. Gravitation is some 1,217 pages of very hardcore, very exacting, interesting science about mankind's modern observations of gravitation, gravitons. Is gravity a particle? Is it a force? Does it come in waves? Does it come in frequencies? But it's a fabulous treatment about everything that we know about gravitation here on Earth, which later I've come to understand is terrestrial physics. All of the physics you see that we study are physics that are dictated by the Earth's relationship with our sun, our dipole-dipole electromagnetic relationship. But not only that, our understanding of physics is dictated also by our existence within the solar system and indeed the local group in this quadrant of our galaxy. Earth is quite unique not because of the Goldilocks placement for life to exist, but also because we're surrounded by both the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt. And these extend far, far out beyond our solar system that work like a stony shroud. And it keeps our space quite dark, and it also protects Earth from many outside events that could be occurring in the galaxy that could otherwise be harmful or change us in some way. We've existed within the Oort cloud and the Kuiper belt for as long as the Earth has been around, and it's believed that both of these stony intermediate junctions between deep stellar space and our solar system are due to the formation afterbirth and what's left over after producing all the planets in our solar system. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you drawings that I have drawn myself and paintings that I've painted myself over the last year of returning home from my experience. While I show you the drawings, I'm going to explain to you briefly which each drawing is and who the different characters were that I'd met. All of those characters are now beings that I've come to consider friends. Right now, you can see the beginning of the process of the end of the softening up process and the beginning of the dissemination and controlled narrative process that world governments are using right now to control our understanding of extraterrestrial civilizations. I call extraterrestrials and aliens BES, B-E-S, which stands for Beyond Earth Sentient. By saying Beyond Earth Sentient, I try and show them some support and some respect because they're not aliens. They're not exoskeletal xenomorphs that want to bite your cranium and drink your brain. However, this is the narrative that world governments and the media would like you to believe that they are. I hope that my story shows you how loving and benevolent the many different species that I've met are, and how they changed my life so profoundly and changed the pathway that I walk on every day, changed my heart and the way I think about all of mankind and the future of our Earth. Thank you for joining us. On January 7th, 2017, my life changed forever. But just before midnight, on January 6th, 2017, at 11:30 p.m., I was taking my dog out for her last walk. My son was upstairs in our house watching Legend of Sleepy Hollow with Johnny Depp. At the time, my son and I had spent some 7 to 9 months every night on our balcony, reaching out to one patch of the sky and communicating with what we had hoped would be benevolent species from another planet. Well, after about 3 months of speaking to the sky, our wish was granted. This ship began to come down 4 or 5 miles above the Earth in the atmosphere and communicate with me. I had gotten to the point in our relationship of communicating psychically with beings from other worlds that I was always allowed to take videos and always allowed to take photographs. And I had my phone with me that night when I took my dog Coca for a walk. All the lights in the neighborhood went out. All the sounds, all the birds, all the cars, all the traffic for at least 2 square miles around my house. And I looked straight up, and about 1 mile above my head was this disc slowly rotating. It was about the size of 2 or 3 aircraft carrier. These are photos that I photographed and had developed. When I asked the ship with my mind if they could rotate and show me their propulsion system, because I've always been fascinated by engineering interstellar conveyance, they were happy to do so, and they turned the ship around and showed me their plasma gravity drive. The drive systems on ships are very different for each ship and for every different species. They showed me some different types of plasma behavior as they sat in situ above my head. Here they had lowered the drive of the center engine releases and turned on a different form of plasma drive on the ends. Before they left, there was a dramatic shift in the colorization of the lights and the plasma coming off the ship. I have many more photographs, and I've shared some of them with our friend Lowell, who's going to put some up. And what I wanted to show you was the beautiful, huge ship that appeared above my head. And then this is another photograph, but it's of a different ship, and it's right down there, and you can see this incredible dark triangle miles above the cumulonimbus clouds. And I'll just go like this, and if you look, you can see that big triangle hiding in the clouds. That ship's also supermassive. That ship belongs to my friend L. L is from Andromeda. This triangle ship is also about the size of 3 or 4 aircraft carrier. They glide in and out, and they only reveal themselves to people who are vibrating on a certain resonance or a certain frequency. L was sent to me because at this point in my relationship with off-world species, he was an incredible mathematician, and he came down to actually help me with my homework. When I returned with my dog and came upstairs, I asked my son to leave the sliding glass door unlocked, and I looked at him and I said, "Don't be alarmed if 4 little people come into the house late tonight." And he laughed, and I went straight to bed and passed out. At 12 midnight, the lights had still been out, and at 12 midnight, I felt this cool ball pushing against my forehead. And I opened my eyes, and there before me were these 2 great blue eyes, like a fish's eyes. And I heard him say with my mind, "I like David's warm forehead, warm nice." And his name is Toth, and Toth and I have become friends over the years, and sometimes he comes by my bakery and says hello. He's allowed me to take photographs of him, which I've shared with my friend Vivian Chauvet and her husband Peter, and also with my dear friend Lowell. And some of my other friends have seen photographs of Toth looking over my bakery table. He's adorable, and he's a very sweet little blue being, about 3.5 feet tall. He's an assistant to the ambassador program from Taurus, and his designate is to assist human beings with the transition of meeting other beyond Earth sentience. When they came into my bedroom, there was 4 of them. Toth, here on the left, number 1 and number 2, who I never got to know, and the one I call Bob, who's here on the right-hand side. He was sort of in a uniform and had a starburst on his chest. The rest of them wore these tunic-style Nehru-collared shirts and tight pants with like a uni shoe where you couldn't see their toes. Bob didn't do anything, but the others sat there and scrubbed me down with a green towel and sterilized my whole body. They put me into what sort of looked like a white hospital smock, and then I was out again. With what seemed like moments, I was awake on the sand at about 27th or 28th Street in Manhattan Beach. By this time, it was about 12:20 or 12:30 midnight. I was standing on a blue light platform. And here, with a little pink heart, is my friend Toth. And they don't have their uni boots on anymore. And you can see that they each have 3 toes and sort of an extended heel. And then this is number 1. And they're both holding my hands and gliding me across the sand. And these bubbles here represent downloads. And they sent me hundreds and hundreds of downloads about my behavior and about my etiquette and how I was supposed to behave and how our species is thought of. Some of the do's and don'ts, like don't show your teeth. And it was interesting because I found out much later that when human beings show their teeth, it's akin to a dog snarling. And so we have to observe lots and lots of physical and emotional etiquette in order for them to be calm enough to be around us and to care for us and to communicate with us. The character on the right here was somebody else who they thought was going to meet Kim Jim, who's inside this tent, and it wasn't his turn. The subject of this is a sort of a trapezoidal gelatinous blue fabric, but you could see through it. It was like gently waving or swaying plasma gossamer, and it looked like 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch thick gelatine, but it was plasma blue and it glowed. And these 2 doors up in front opened up like scissors. It was much smaller on the outside than it was on the inside. As Toth and number 1 glided me up the sand to the entrance of the tent, they told me what a special time I was going to have and to walk through the doors. They kept using my name and saying things like, remember that this is your special day, and bow to the council. Very interesting stuff, but they gave me hundreds of downloads about my behavior and what was to be expected of me. Upon entering this gossamer blue tent, I passed through a door and I'm standing in a large blue glowing room. I passed to the right and I'm amazed it's so small outside, but it's so large on the inside. There was a brighter glowing entrance of this electric blue, which I walked through, and there sitting on a white rectangular soft foamy settee was Kim Jim, who's my very dear friend now, and Kim Jim comes to see me twice a year, or once every 2 years, I'm sorry. Kim Jim patted the settee with his hand and said, here, sit next to me, David. We have a lot to discuss. One of the first things I want to discuss with you is human emotional chemical value systems and how they affect your thinking and how they affect your behavior. And I had no problem walking up to him because he emanated this beautiful sense of love and kindness. He held my hand and his fingers were so long that it wrapped around my wrist twice. He told me how happy he was to see me and that he would explain why I was allowed to remember everything that was going to occur to me and what my new role was in my life. Well, I have to tell you at this point, the tears were flowing down my cheeks uncontrollably. And I felt so glad to be with him, almost like my best friend I've ever had that I've missed for 5 years, and it's the first time we've seen each other. And he felt the same way about me. When Kim Jim was done working with me and explaining what Akashic records were and taking me back into my last 2 past lives and telling me about this life and the gift of this life. My life is a great gift, and I understand now how important it is for all of us to view life as a precious, precious fleeting object, and that every moment is a great gift, no matter how hard the system around us or the emotions of other people that we take responsibility for are trying to crush our feelings, whether that's on purpose or just by the nature of their own behavior. Every moment in life is a precious gift. Kim Jim said, hold my hand tightly no matter what. And he pointed to the sky. Just at that moment, I felt a very strong tingling at my neck and my shoulders. Kim Jim and I were lifted very high up above Southern California so that we could actually see Santa Monica, Malibu, and Vandenberg Air Force Base way below us. We entered the small opening of a giant round disc, very similar, if not the same, as the big ship that I showed you the photographs of. He held my hand tightly, and we went straight up. As soon as we passed through the opening in the bottom of the ship, it closed seamlessly and quietly beneath our feet. At this point, I was starting to feel very uncomfortable pins and needles in my feet. And I mentioned this to Kim Jim, and he just ignored that and said, "Float up on light pad, David, fun." And you can see him standing, and they have this way of controlling light plasma so that it becomes a soft, solid object. And they use it both in transportation, illumination, for building shelters out of, and for all sorts of different uses. For models, it's moldable and it's controllable based on a type of technology that they haven't yet revealed to me. The blue handrail is made of light, the same kind of light that I floated across the sand on, and the one that Kim Jim bade me to stand on the interior of this vast ship. And you can see there's light railings and other entities moving around to different aspects of the ship, performing whatever function that they are on that ship for. These long white things with the black balls at the bottom represent a type of magnet, and I haven't received all the information about what type of magnet they were, but they were incredibly huge. They were 20 feet in diameter, 30 feet in diameter, and about 40 feet long, and they swayed like sea anemone from the bottom of the midships deck. And as the ship moved, we were at such an interesting position in the ship that when it tilted, you could see the magnets move, but not feel the ship tilt. And that would let us know that the ship was changing its apogee and about to get into some sort of vector-controlled thrust. We went up through the center floor, and Kim Jim helped me from the floating platform amidships and said farewell. "David, this is Erom. She is your deck guide, who will take you to Weimar. I love you very much. I will see you before 2 years. Remember everything I told you. Love you. Have a wonderful time." Erom very plaintively said to me, "Hello, David, I'm Erom. I've been told that you should avoid direct eye contact with the controllers. They are not fond of your species. You may, however, gaze upon their greatness with peripheral vision only. Weimar is eager to meet you. Please follow me." And she was really, really beautiful. She had thin, silky black hair, black and green almond-shaped eyes with lots of freckles. And she wore a pink and orange gown that was see-through. And she had a very lovely figure. And I drew lots of hearts and little gold balls around her because she was just radiating love the whole time. And that's a very accurate drawing of Kim Jim, by the way. That's exactly his size and how he looks. As she took my hand and we walked across this large black glass floor, I did look with my peripheral vision, and there was a ring of these black polished granite sarsens, and in this, like a sort of a very geometric Stonehenge circle. And inside of it were similarly polished slabs with lights and buttons all over them. And they were being attended to by these very interesting, very tall yellow grasshopper beings wearing like gemstone sparkly gowns. Their gowns were gorgeous. Above their heads was a giant blue hologram of the earth with the moon. And you can see in the background the windows that line the periphery of the ship amidships. She walked me to the other side of the ship where I met Weimar. And he was a very curious person. Weimar is a very powerful scientist, very powerful psychic entity. I never found out what planet he came from, but Weimar was very, very patient with me. Remember that when you're in presence with beings that have a much greater sense of evolution, a much greater sense of intellect, a more powerful way to express themselves, and much more advanced cerebral functions, that when they're with us, and they do care about us quite a bit, but when they're with us, they oftentimes hold our hands and speak to us like children. And I think that's some of the recall that we have when we do have experiences with off-world beings, is that we get the impression that we're their children. And I've heard tales of beings like the Watchers who stay sort of aloof of the complete picture of mankind, but intervene occasionally. Weimer was very patient. He's a brilliant scientist, physicist of vector calculus, and downloaded the information about near light speed travel and light speed travel to me. He was gentle, and as he sat me into one of the green tubular chairs that you see there against the windows, I think often now that he downloaded so much information about different physics and equations and formulas to me from 12 or 13 different forms of physics, that by the time he had finished sitting me in my chair, I had a complete understanding of Maxwell's theory of electromagnetism. I knew what Coulomb's law was. I knew all about the 4 laws of thermodynamics, including the zeroth law. I found out all about radiological sciences. I had a complete download of interesting minerals and a new type of chemical chart that showed different chemicals and different compounds. So their periodic table of elements has something like 170 elements from their local group, plus another 200 or 300 elements known from other solar systems. And some of those include the ones that are, you bet, right on our periodic table of the elements. Let's look at the chair and what Weimer taught me and told me. So you can see him very gently holding my face. In the background there, you can see the Earth and the Moon hologram and the center of the ship where the controllers are controlling the ship. I began to get comfortable thinking my questions, and thanks to the etiquette downloads I received, Toth and Number One and Kim Jim showed me how to send my thoughts and show love and respect. And all at once, you can send a whole package of question information and you'll receive it back very quickly in a format that's easy for our simple minds to understand. Though we feel that the human brain is a very, very complex quantum computer that does all these unimaginable things, our brain is only learning how to be less simple. Our cognitive areas and our Broca's area, our limbic system, are still developing. But the development of our cerebral cortex and our cerebrum are really based on gravitation, light, time, and sound. Kim Jim, Weimer, and even the Joey doctor, which you'll meet in a few minutes, all told me that we would develop differently should we have been 300 million light years from Earth, being bathed in the light of a different sun. Our brains would develop differently, our bones would be different, our whole attitudes would be different. But all of them showed great hope in the future of mankind, that eventually we would learn to love and respect all life forms on our own planet and learn how to love and respect each other. They're waiting for us to make the change. A lot of us have, and they come back every 1,000 years or every 500 years to reawaken what's called the Ambassador Program. And this is where they wake up millions of human beings on the planet to help us see through the lies and the control mechanisms that all humanity is suffering right now. You see, here on Earth, there's plenty of food and plenty of shelter and plenty of love for every being and every creature. But the powers that be don't want you to believe that, and they're so spurious at controlling the narrative and throwing things in your face that will keep you emotionally upset, because the powers that be understand that your thinking processes are guided by your emotional stability. I think that Weimer would have been bored had he not given me all those mathematic downloads. When I asked him what protected the ship from micrometeorites, meteoroid impacts, or from toxic bursts of gamma radiation, or from a toxic beam from a neutron star or a quasar, he said very simply that the ship was protected by a naturally occurring warp bubble, which we call an orlon. When this speed is reached, and he said 76,449.446 kilometers per minute. I also heard that it's 64,448 miles per second. It's not by design. He said that all species who travel experience this natural phenomena once they gain the knowledge of intergalactic flight. The same thing will be open to us when we get beyond the need to turn all of Earth's animals into handbags, blow each other up, and stop thinking about food, sex, and money. There are a lot of human conditions and terrestrial paradigms that we must break free from. One of them is the tape looping of food, sex, and money, and to put those things in perspective so they don't become all-consuming. Weimer gave me some warp formula downloads, and they're there on the right. The blue spheres represent what's called an 81 warp stack bubble. And the diagram just above the blue ones is what he said was the orthogonal expression of the 81 warp stack bubble. And he says it's a form of infinite travel between different dimensions and different areas of space, which would otherwise take lesser species a vast amount of time to pass. We would be traveling in what was known as to Earth as an Einstein-Rosen bridge, and it was much more than that. When Weimer was done folding me into the green tubular chair, and the chair, by the way, was made of light and it wasn't welded to the floor, he said, "Just hold your hands like this." And I thought of an Egyptian mummy, and he giggled and he says, "Yep, we've been traveling with your species for many millennia." And he folded these light tubes around me. The chair floated where it was, and as soon as he finished connecting the last arms and folding them in front of my arms, the chair reclined gently. My head was being ensconced by a very soft, very comfortable sort of light. It wasn't really like an examination chair. It was like this really soft light. And in fact, I felt like my body wasn't really contacting the chair. I was sort of like floating inside of a green cage, which was floating on the floor in front of a big window. One of the things that he said was for me to pay attention and look out the window. And he said, "This is the part everybody likes the most." So, oftentimes when I look at my drawings, I am filled with a deep sense of emotion and deep love. So I'm resisting the temptation to show too much emotion during this talk. Weimer bade me to look out the window. I could see Brazil and the islands near Martinique. The ship pulled up above and away from my home planet. And I have to say, it was seeing the Earth changed so many things about the way I had perceived our planet and our position within the solar system. But it was one of the most beautiful things I'd ever seen. I watched as our giant ship joined a vast armada of some 50 ships. We were on the right-hand side of the ships, and it was like a V. And as we all aligned into this giant V and pulled up above the Earth, this electric crack ran from left to right in the center of the window, and it started to emanate sparkly spheres of blue, electric light blue and silver, and spheres of white. And it looked like a continuously flowing giant thunderbolt. As we left the Earth, the beautiful stars faded before me as a brilliantly sparkly silver and white electric blue band opened up, and it split the window in such a way. Weimer stood by me as our nighttime Earth slipped below. We proceeded to join some 50 ships in this fleet. The band became brighter and brighter and swayed and crackled, and all of the ships lined up, and within moments we flew right into the center of this giant electric arc.
It was almost as if the window had split and was rolling in one direction, and the bottom of the window was rolling in the other direction. And all the stars that we see in our black and white space had become blurry, and all I could see were these incredible light balls and this incredible, brilliant, bright white lightning that we were flying through. There was no sound, but the trip was at least 35 to 45 minutes, and Weimer stood with me the whole time. I looked to the right, and there was 2 other humans that were asleep in 2 chairs, 1 chair away from me, and they looked like this really nicely dressed yuppie couple in their 30s, but they were out. Most of the other human beings that were on the ship were out, and as far as I know, I am the only one that was allowed to remain awake to understand this experience and to understand what the very powerful messages they have for all of humanity. After what seemed to be perhaps about an hour, the ribbon of the energy that we rode within collapsed, and to my utter amazement, outer space was no longer black, but filled with pinks and magentas, purples and blues. Weimer informed me that we had reached our destination, the Aldebaran system, Taurus Sun Station, the planet Bro-Kali. And it was some years later that, after I had complete cognition and remembered every aspect of my journey, when I had met Kim Jim on our 2nd anniversary, he told me that there was a black hole which I represented in the painting. I painted this almost 1 year to the date of being returned home from my trip. He said that the black hole was engineered and that it was set at a Lagrange distance so that it was not going to be any harm to the solar system of the terraformed planet Bro-Kali. Here up at the left is Aldebaran, and that's an orange dwarf. And between Aldebaran and this orange dwarf, Bro-Kali receives this beautiful golden, orange, and yellow sunlight. He said that the black hole was put at just the right aspect, so with the ships that are flying in at above light speed they have their velocity arrested within microseconds. And if you're a Star Trek fan, you'll hear every once in a while them talk about what's called an inertial dampener. Well, that's what they use on the inside of those ships. They use inertial dampeners, and you don't feel velocity when you're traveling in a vacuum. But there are force fields that change, drive systems that change, speeds that change, and inertia and velocity changes, so that you cannot help but sense some kinematic or rotational and angular kinematic adjustment that you may be making while flying at very high speeds. The ship soon circled Bro-Kali, as I was to find out that there was a disembarkation ceremony and that we were going to go to our quads to spend the night, have meetings with each other, and then on the very next 2 days be giving a dissertation about the planet Earth and some other planets that were in trouble. Here's an image of Bro-Kali, and I used to call it the broccoli planet, and I was corrected a couple of years later by Kim Jim. It's called Bro-Kali. But all the trees looked like broccoli, and they were translucent, and they were beautiful, and the soil was like rich terracotta, and it smelled sweet, and the sky was a lovely blue. Here we're getting off of the ship, and this is the disembarkation. And I made friends on the ship after a while, and I knew that I had met them before or that I'd be seeing them again. But there are many hundreds of different types of species on this enormous craft. And in my excitement and my stupidity, I still had suffered from these really terrible pins and needles in my legs. And I ran to the edge of the ramp and pulled free from Weimer's grasp, and I fell, and I landed right on top of my head, and I punched a piece of my skull into my right cerebral hemisphere, and it damaged a lot of my memories. And it was amazing that they had a very special doctor there who was able to fix me up in no time. After I had hurt myself, I was taken to what is known as a Jowita-ur, and many Jowita-ur exist throughout the galaxy. They're cerebral specialists who understand the cerebral functions and the development of many hundreds and hundreds of species, so that during ambassadorial or galactic scientific get-togethers, if anyone injures their spine or if anyone injures their brain, the Jogi Ta'ur doctor can fix them no matter what the damage. He held a device in his hand called a curla, and we'll talk about that in my book that will be released sometime this year. The curla was a gold, hollow, springy box that he strapped around my head. After he had regrown the brain that was smashed in my right cerebral hemisphere, he transferred the knowledge and the photographic memory images that I had stored in the left hemisphere of my brain over to the right. And that's an amazing process that would take a couple hours to talk about. I have all the information about it, and I have better drawings of the curla device and my time well spent with the Jogi Ta'ur. He was very dear, and as my face was reforming before me, and as I was waking up, he floated up to me on one of those light pads, and he looked right into my eyes and says, "How are you feeling, David?" And I said I felt fine. He goes, "Okay, the heat that you feel on your face will go away in a moment, and then we will continue with your information exchange." And he was really, really wonderful. Those are bloody towels, and that's a big, big glass of water that he gave me. This is a door leading to the outside, and this is a blue plasma light beam that exists on the inside of the door frame. You can't see what's outside, and outside can't see what's in. But if you pass your face just through that black sheet, which you can't feel, then you can see outside. It's a very interesting privacy gateway. One of the things that I must mention is that, they have cupboards and they have sinks and they have chairs and they have a lot of things that we have here on Earth. They use the same things. At a certain point, some things just can't be recreated to make them better. A cup will always be a cup, a basin always a basin, and a faucet always a faucet. But one of the interesting things that I noticed about the hinges, because he let me go through his office and open and close doors and look at some of the tools, the hinges were grown to the door and to the cupboard, and they were connected like that. There was no screws or other parts to take apart. They were biologically grown, yet separated from themselves, and they had this beautiful, smooth function when you open them. It was almost like the cupboards were a living creature, but that would be silly. Everything that was built into a building or a walkway or a wall or a picnic bench, everything was made of the same stuff. It was this unbelievably beautiful, sparkly, bright white sort of Corian material. Like Corian kitchen counters, they're like 3 inches thick. They're really hard, but they're brilliantly white, and they stay beautiful all the time. That's what everything was made out of on this planet, or at least that's what it looked like. Here I am in my smock, being led away by a different being who came to collect me. This is the doctor's office back here, and I'm walking down a pathway to go to the auditorium where I'm supposed to be releasing a whole bunch of information that I had stored all my life about the situation on planet Earth, what mankind is doing to themselves, and how we treat the animals. He wasn't very happy to collect me, and I think it's because when I fell down and injured myself, I had somehow interrupted the flow of events there on the planet. We stopped into a very strange room on the way to the auditorium. There, this very strange squid-like yellow being was lifting military soldiers off of this glowing pad and placing them onto these black floating slabs that floated about 3 or 4 feet above the floor. They had gold bands, and their heads rested on a golden pillow, and they floated in situ. And they were making nightmarish sounds, like they were having a nightmare and they were in pain. I asked the little fellow that was walking me, I said, "Is that man in pain?" And he said, "No, David. We are saving these officers from the trauma of the things that they have committed." This was such a beautiful revelation for me to find out that Many of the special services, upper echelons of the military and the world's governments, the US government, the NSA, many of the officers who have had to do terrible things in the name of their countries are actually having their souls returned to them and having their memories of these horrible events that they've had to do taken from them so that they can be normal human beings again. One of the interesting things that they did, and they showed me, was to remove all of the injections and all of the terrible chemicals that these very important top Pentagon officials and NSA officials had been given to control their minds. And it was done by a very beautiful doctor with a glass wand. The doctor would walk up to them and touch this long glass wand to their forehead and then whip it away towards this beautiful large sort of alabaster wall that had this 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch scrolled arabesques. And there are these thousands of these beautiful whorls and swirls of these arabesques, but each officer's diagnosis was based on a pattern. And when he pulled the wand away from the forehead of these officers, there was this clear mucousy sinew that he drew from their foreheads, and it had these little golden balls in it, and it would slap against the wall, and as soon as it did, it would go and fly into this pattern, and it would glow bright red. From that, this doctor held a small rectangular golden box, and he would punch a few buttons on it, and he'd walk back up to the officer where he had drawn this mucus from their forehead, and he would hold the gold box to their forehead, and many colored lights would flash, and they would stop making the nightmare sounds. And this is what they were doing to change the structure of their emotional memory encoding so that their brain would be more responsive to sympathy, compassion, and love, and take away the horrible brainwashing of attrition, hatred, murder, and greed that had been pumped into these beautiful, beautiful soldiers ever since they joined the military when they were young. I think a lot of us joined the military wanting to do the right thing, and a lot of my family members are in the military, and gosh, I really respect and love U.S. military personnel. They're our brothers and sisters, and they deserve a lot of love and compassion. But just as these beings had shown them a special gift, I didn't fully understand until I was returned to Earth that if and when there is going to be a fifth branch of the military called the Space Force, when the dark sadistic beings who think they're in control tell the operational commander at the Space Force to fire upon these beautiful, intelligent, sentient species as they're coming towards the Earth, these officers who have had their souls saved are going to turn around and say no. We finally left that building, which is represented by this square one here, and went down the pathway. And there, waiting in this auditorium, were many thousands of different species. And I saw 3 or 4 humans, but I couldn't pick out the individuality of each species in the bleachers of this giant, vast complex. All of the grass on Broccoli was pretty interesting. It was 3 simple blades. It always smelled like it had just been cut, and it was soft and firm at the same time. It was a beautiful terraformed planet. It was a very simple planet, and I think that a lot of rescues of different species and animals come to Broccoli to be held in safety in a natural environment until they can be returned to their planet after it's gone through its convolution. I sat on what I can only describe as a plinth, which raised up into the air some 50 feet, perhaps 100. And I was surrounded by many, many different galactic ambassadors, scientists, doctors, and species who all had questions for me about what was going on Earth. Every time I heard this type of strange ping, I would turn and look in the direction of that sound. I would receive the question and stare at these giant screens that were before me. And when I answered the question with my mind, 30 or 40 of these giant images would come up, which were directly correlated or related to the question being asked. Many of them didn't know about things like fracking. Many of them didn't know about portholes and CERN. Many of them didn't know about things like whale beachings because of HARP, the devastation of the planet, the horrible poorness, and the way cultures are being subjugated and fed garbage to destroy their natural indigenous tribal wealth. They had no idea. There was only a select group of species who were in charge of maintaining the Earth, and I had come to find out that they had failed in their mission, and that one of the reasons I was there with several other humans was to give a dissertation on the condition of Earth and the condition of mankind and where we're heading with war and hatred, nuclear waste and oil byproducts, cancer and satellites covering the planet. Many of them were shocked, saying they don't know, they've lost their way. Father, please, it's not their planet. I was hearing this psychically over and over again. I knew that there was a program of change that was about to be released. This was in 2017, and there had been many thousands of physical contact with species from beyond this world before me. I'm just one more voice in that. I'm just one more ambassador that they've lit up to help mankind wake up and say, hey, there's nothing to be afraid of. We're part of a greater family. We're part of a greater organization that loves us, that loves life, and they're going to help us. They're here to help us save ourselves. So no matter what you see on the media right now, and you're going to see a lot more, I guarantee it, just turn on YouTube or turn on the news and everything's about UFOs and UAPs. Remember what I said with Lowell earlier, please don't use government-sponsored acronyms. Listen to your voice. Call them what you want to call them. Just don't demonize them. They are very sweet. Many of them are very caring. Many of them want to change the earth for the better, but they have to get us to understand that this is not our planet. We were placed here as a gift. The earth is an ark. The earth carries many species from all over the galaxy that were rescued by them from their dying worlds, from their dying suns, and placed on the earth to live in genetic perpetuity in harmony with the many other species from around the galaxy. Look at the incredible variety of our planet. Look at the microscopic life forms, the macroscopic life forms. Look at the reptiles and insects and beautiful furry mammals like tigers and lions and leopards, elephants and dolphins, octopus and praying mantis. Can't you imagine what the planets look like that those beautiful species were rescued from? We were placed here as a gift. And a long time ago, God told us that this is the Garden of Eden and that we must cherish it. There isn't a whole lot more I can tell you about my trip, but a lot more detail will be placed into my book, and when it's available, then I'll make sure that Lowell can tell you guys that it's for sale. When I am feeling lonely and if I'm feeling down, all I have to do now is think of them and they come to me. In the following 3 episodes that Lowell and I are doing, I'll be releasing photographs of ships, but more importantly, I'll be sharing photographs of sentient species from other worlds that have come to visit me in my home. One, because they love me and they know that I love them very dearly. But secondly, because they've asked me to join what's called an ambassadorial program. And it was a hard decision to make because when they presented me with that program idea, they said that I would lose all of my friends, I would lose all of my family, and that people would treat me like a heretic. But that the work was very important because it meant the very saving of our souls and the awakening of our species to the beautiful vibrations and the beautiful harmony and symphony that all life provides, and that everything is sacred. A dead leaf or a pine needle is no different than a stone, and a stone is no different than a whale, and a pool of water is no different than the moon in the sky. And that all reality is sacred, and that we were special beings because our souls were placed into these 3-dimensional corporeal bodies in order to feel love and to feel compassion and to have emotions, because emotions are beautiful things to have. the deep sense of love and respect and unity that we should all share for one another always. I really appreciate your time, and I value your friendship. And when I sit here in retrospect and I think about the wonderful things that they've shared with me, well, I just can't wait to share them with all of you. I love you guys very much. Lowell, I'm handing it back over to you. Thank you, my brother, and we'll see each other soon.